For part 2 of our CAD modeling skills assignments, we're going to go and make this heating element. This is a U-shaped item that has threads on one end and then this tapered end on the other side. It's also hollow in the middle. It's a tube. So we're going to go ahead and make this part for a couple reasons. One, we're going to learn how to do some threads. We're going to go over the sweep command, and then we're also going to use the revolve command again as well. So we need to start off by figuring out the best way to approach this, and we want to use the sweep command to actually make this part. So I'm essentially going to draw the center line of this tube in order to make the part. That's kind of where I'm going to start. So I'm going to draw this side here as a straight line, the part that has the thread on it. I'm going to draw the opposite side as a straight line. I'm going to omit this 1/4 inch tapered end for the time being. We're going to come back in and add that later, and then I'm going to add this arc to complete that. So in Fusion, I'm going to go ahead and grab my line tool. I'm going to start the line at the origin, and I'm going to go ahead and place it, hit escape, put a dimension on it, and then I'm going to go back to my drawing. And in my drawing, I'm essentially, if I rotated this front view 90 degrees clockwise, that's what I'm sketching. So the bottom, the origin of the drawing is here at the center of this thread, and I'm sketching this length here up to this point where the dimension is given. So that needs to be 2.31 inches. So I'm going to go back to Fusion, change that to 2.31 inches, and hit enter. And then if I look at my drawing, I'm going to make this length here, which is going to be 2.06 inches minus this 0.25. And I don't need to do the math in my head because Fusion will let me do it myself. So I'm going to hit escape, hit L for line. I'm just going to start it on this baseline here and go 90 degrees. And it's going to be 2.06 minus 0.25. Literally type that in as my dimension. I'm going to hit enter. So you can use Fusion to your advantage, and you can do math within the actual dimension itself to get to the dimension you need, either addition, subtraction, division, all those different types of things. The next thing I need to do is make sure that they're spaced correctly. So the center line of the tube is 1.95 inches apart. So I'm going to hit D for dimension between each line. Pretty close, but it needs to be 1.95. Hit enter. And then the other thing is that I need this point here to be in line with this point up here. So I can literally, let me escape here. I can literally drag this around if I wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a line command. I'm going to change it to construction. I'm going to click from the top of this point over here, horizontally across. I'm going to make that 1.95. Hit enter. And then I'm going to use my coincident constraint, and I'm going to constrain this point to that point. And that's going to move that line all the way up there so it's sitting where it needs to be now. And then finally, I'm going to go to create an arc, and I want a 3-point arc. And I'm going to click on the end point of this first line, the end point of that second line. And you can see as I drag up, it starts to make the arc. When it gets to a certain point, it's going to snap. And right there, it's snapped to make the arc tangent to those two lines on the other side. So let's just say I accidentally did this by accident. First of all, that's a construction line, so I forgot to turn that off, so I'm going to hit escape and click on that and then hit delete. And then I'm going to turn off construction, go back to my arc, 3-point arc, same thing, click there, click there. I'm going to make it go a little past tangent and hit escape. I'm going to grab my tangent constraint up here in my constraint panel, and I'm going to make this tangent to that and this tangent to that. And it's going to give me an error because when I made these two tangent, it automatically pulled this one into tangent as well, even though it doesn't have the actual symbol there. So this is all done correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that sketch. Go to an ISO view, and I can kind of see my sketch sitting there. So now if I go back to my drawing, I need to make this sketch profile, which is 2 concentric circles, and I need to make it perpendicular to this point, or to this line here, to the line that I just made, that contour. So I'm going to go and create a sketch, and then I'm going to click on this plane here, and you'll notice as soon as I do that, it pulls that line down, and now I'm looking at that sketch I just made, but I'm sitting perpendicular to it. So now if I grab a circle, Actually, I'm going to look at my drawing. I have two circles. The first one's 0.27 inches in diameter, and the second one's 0.37. So I'm going to grab that circle command, snap on that origin, make that 0.27, and enter. And then I'm going to do that again. I'll hit C on the keyboard, snap there, 0.37, enter. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that sketch. And now what you can see is that my circles are sitting perpendicular to that original sketch that I made. So now if I go and grab the sweep command under the create panel, go down to sweep. I want to select my profile, so if I zoom in on this, I want to select the profile in between those two lines, just that one, not the center. And then I'm going to go to path, and as soon as I click on the path, it's going to auto-create that sweep. So I'll click on that path, and now it has created that profile, and it swept it along that path and created the geometry that I wanted. So once I've done that, I'm going to hit OK. And then go to my ISO view here so I can take a look at that, and then go to my drawing. So I need a couple more things. I need the threads on this end, which is a 3/8/16 UNC 3A thread that is 1/2 inch long, 0.5 inches. And then I also need to create this tapered end over here as well. So to do that, I'm going to start with my threads first. So I'm going to go up to the create panel, and I'm going to go down to thread. When I do that, I'm going to click on this outside face, and I'm going to go over to my thread panel. So there's a couple things I need to do. First thing is I need to uncheck full length. So when I uncheck that, that gives me a length value that I can plug in, which should be that 0.5. You can notice that updates my thread over here. Because of the diameter of the tube we made, it automatically already selected the 3/8/16 UNC 3A class thread that we needed. So the only other thing we have to do is go up here and check modeled. And you'll see the difference that makes here in a second. So if I hit modeled, I'm going to hit OK. And it physically creates the model of the thread, the actual 3D geometry. Now if I go back to that thread here down on my timeline, I'm going to double click on it and edit it, and I uncheck modeled and hit OK. All it does is show a graphic representation of that thread on the part. Now this can be useful because it requires less processing power for your computer to be able to render the image versus the actual modeled threads. But if you're going to be doing any type of machining or 3D printing or anything like that, we want the actual modeled threads in there. So I'm going to double click on that again and change that to modeled and click OK. And that adds the actual threads on the end of my part. So the next thing I want to do is create the tapered end on this other side. So to do that, I actually need to get a sketch that is centered in the center of this tube. So to do that, I'm going to actually have to create two work planes that are tangent on either side of this tube, and then create one that's centered in between them. So if I go up to construct, and under work plane, I'm going to select tangent plane. I'm going to click on this tube, and it's going to create a work plane. Let me go to a side view here, that is tangent to this tube sitting straight up and down in the air. Now I can rotate this around and put it at whatever angle I want, but I want this to be at 0 degrees, so I'll hit OK. I'm going to do the same thing. Hit construct, tangent plane. I'm going to click on that same tube again and go to a side view. And now I have two planes that are parallel to one another but sitting on tangent on either side of this tube, which is what I want. So I'll hit OK. And then finally, I'm going to go into construct and do mid plane. And when I do that, I'm going to select that outside plane I created first, construction plane, and then this inside one. And now, if I go to a side view again, it's going to create a plane right down the center of that tube, which is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And then I'm going to go over to my browser under construction, and I'm going to hide plane number 1 and plane number 2 so it only shows that third plane, which is the one I want. I'm then going to create a new sketch, and I'm going to click on that plane. I could do it here, or I could click on it over here in the browser. Either one works. And now you see that what I'm trying to sketch, I have my threads and the other side of my part in the way. So in order to get those out of the way so I can actually see what I'm sketching, I'm going to go over to my sketch palette, and I'm going to click this checkbox that says slice. When I do that, it's going to physically remove everything out of my vision up to that work plane that I created in the center of that. So I can now see essentially a section view, a cross-section view of that tube on that side. So now I can go in and start creating my sketch that I want to do to revolve and create the end, tapered end on that heating element. So to do that, first thing I need to do is actually project some geometry. So I'm going to hit P on the keyboard. And I'm going to select the cross-section of the tube and hit OK. So now that gives me some geometry that I can work off with. You can kind of see that purple line there. So there's no dimensions on this other than that it is a 1/4 inch long. So I'm going to grab the line command. I'm actually going to snap to the midpoint here. And I'm going to draw a line that's perfectly horizontal and 0.25 inches long. I'm going to use the line command. And I'm going to drag this out. We'll say 0.1 inches will work. Hit enter. And then I'm going to take another line command from the endpoint of there, attach it to the endpoint of, or the outside diameter of that tube, and then I'm going to go ahead and close that geometry. So if I look at my drawing, this is supposed to be hollow on the end, but just to make this a little easier, we're going to make it solid. So now that I have, hit escape there, now that I have this geometry, I'm going to hit finish sketch, go to an ISO view. And now you can see that I have this wedge-shaped sketch that represents kind of the cross-section of the tapered end that I want to create. So what I'll do is I will go into Create and Revolve. It auto-selects that profile because it's the only one available in any of the sketches right now. But I could go back to that profile and close that out, and then I can reselect it. And then the axis I'm going to select is the center axis of this sketch that I made, or this bottom edge. And when I do that, it's going to create a tapered end on that heating element. I'm going to hit OK. So now, if I go back to my drawing, it's a little too steep for the drawing. Once again, we're not going to any specific dimension or angle here, but I do want it to match a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my last sketch, which is sketch number 3. I'm going to edit it, hit slice on my sketch palette. And I want it to be a little shallower of an angle. So instead of 0.1, I'm going to change this to 0.15. Hit enter. And that's going to push that out and make that a more shallow angle. Hit finish sketch, go out, and now you can see that that is updated, and it's a little closer to the actual angle that is on the drawing. Now, if I wanted to, I could go back and I could create another sketch on this face here. I'm going to project that circle to it, hit OK. Now I have a center point of that circle, so I can go grab this circle, and I know the inside diameter of my tubing is 0.27. Hit enter, finish that sketch, and then I can just extrude, cut, and I'll just say 0.5 would be fine, and I'll hit OK. And now I have that end point there, or that tapered end that is now hollow like it shows in the sketch. So there's a number of different ways you can approach doing this. You can do it in any different order. Instead of doing a revolve here for this end, we could have created a tapered extrusion on that end, for example. We could have swept the circle itself, just the outside diameter of this tube, and then we could have used the shell command to shell that out. We have a lot of different options for different ways that we could make this part, and this is just one example that shows you how to use threads, the sweep command, and another example of the revolve command. So now that the part is done, we need to export an image of it to submit to Canvas. So first off, we're going to go to our data panel. We'll go to IED. We'll go into IED and create a new folder called 1.3.4b. Hit enter. Go ahead and go into that folder. And then we're going to go ahead and save this part as heating element. Hit save. And then I'm going to kind of zoom in on it, make it large in my graphics window. And then I'm going to go up to File, Capture Image. Hit OK. Save it to my project in the cloud, which is my 1.3.4b folder. Saved to my computer. I'm going to make sure it goes to my downloads. and then hit the drop down here and change it from a PNG to a JPEG, and go ahead and hit save. As that's loading, it'll go ahead and save into your 1.3.4 folder. When it does, it will give you the option to refresh and update, and then it'll show that image within your folder in Fusion. And then you need to go out, get your image from your downloads folder, and go ahead and upload that to Canvas as your submission for this assignment.